Close your eyes for me, just for a moment. It's a Tuesday afternoon in 1976. The school bell's just gone. You're walking home down a terraced street in, let's say Manchester, or Sheffield, or maybe a little village in Kent. Doesn't really matter. The pavement's still warm from the sun, your satchel slung over one shoulder, and in your pocket, you've got 10pence. Maybe a bit more, if you were good and your nan slipped you a 50pence piece on Sunday. And there it is, the corner shop, the little bell above the door, the smell that hit you when you walked in newspapers, pipe tobacco, sherbet, and that faint, beautiful whiff of warm crisps that had been sitting on the shelf since morning. You know the sound I mean. That crackle of cellophane between your fingers, the way the foil on a salt and shake bag flashed silver in the afternoon light, the proud rustle of a fresh packet of crisps opened on the walk home, eaten one at a time so they'd last all the way to your front door. Kids today, they've got Doritos and Pringles and crisps that come in shiny tubes shaped like footballs. Hundreds of flavors, all the same, all made by 2 or 3 giant companies, all tasting, somehow, of nothing in particular. But us. Well, we had something else, didn't we? We had crisps with names like Adventure Stories, Outer Spacers, Horror Bags, Tudor, Scampy Fries, Nik Naks before they changed the recipe, Smith's with the little blue twist of salt at the bottom of the bag, which, if you weren't careful, would tip out all at once and ruin the whole packet. We had cheese footballs in tins at Christmas, Bovril Crisps that tasted of beef and dripping, discos that snapped between your teeth like burnt toast. These weren't snacks, they were small adventures, a whole world packaged up for 10pence at the corner shop, run by a fella called Mr. Patel or Mrs. Davies who knew your name and remembered your mum's order, and one by one, quietly, without anyone really noticing, they disappeared. Bought up by bigger companies, reformulated, rebranded, quietly killed off in a boardroom in High Wycombe or Slough. The flavours we grew up on, the names we whispered to each other in the playground, gone. So today, on Britain Retold, we're going to remember 15 of them. 15 British crisps from the 1970s that have vanished forever. Stay with me. You'll remember more than you think. Right. Let's start where every great crisp story started. The playground. If you went to school in Britain in the 70s, you'll remember the trade. Lunchtime, the bell goes, and out come the lunchboxes. Half a tuna paste sandwich, a penguin biscuit if you were lucky, and a packet of crisps. And the crisps, well, the crisps were currency. Better than money, a bag of the right flavour could get you a swap on a curly whirly, a go on someone's Raleigh chopper after school, or, if it was a really good flavour, a kiss behind the bike sheds. Top of the pile, undisputed king of the playground, was Smith's Salt and Shake. Now, you young ones might not understand this, but in 1975, crisps didn't come pre-salted, not the proper ones. Smith's gave you a plain crisp and a little twist of blue paper at the bottom of the bag, full of salt. You had to find it, untwist it, shake it over the top, and toss the bag like a chef. Half the time you'd put too much in and your tongue would burn for an hour. The other half you'd forget to shake it at all and end up with a salt bomb on the very last crisp. But that was the joy of it. You were doing something. You were building your dinner. Then there was Golden Wonder, the great Scottish challenger. Launched in Edinburgh back in 1947, by the 70s they were the biggest crisp brand in Britain. Their cheese and onion flavour, in that lurid green packet, was the best seller in school tuck shops up and down the country. The proper recipe, the original one, was sharper, stronger. They've changed it a dozen times since. Tudor Crisps. Oh, Tudor, made up in Newcastle, sold mostly in the northeast and Scotland. If you grew up in Sunderland or Gateshead or Middlesbrough, Tudor was your crisp. Their prawn cocktail flavour, in that pink and white bag, was a thing of pure pink wonder. By 1992, Walkers had bought them out and quietly killed the brand off. Northern shops kept asking for them for years afterwards. Demand never quite died. Supply did. And then, the ones that really belonged to the kids. Outer Spacers. Made by Smith's in the mid-70s, These were little crispy bites shaped like spaceships and planets. Tasted, if I'm being honest, of slightly stale corn, but they came in a packet with a cartoon astronaut on the front, and at 7 years old, that was all that mattered. We weren't eating crisps, we were eating the future. Horror bags came along around the same time, from Golden Wonder. Same idea, different theme. Little crispy snacks shaped like skulls and bats and witches' hats, in a black packet with a green ghoul on the front. Boys loved them, mums hated them. They lasted barely 5 years before someone in marketing decided horror wasn't selling and quietly retired the whole range. These were the crisps of the school run, you see. The crisps of swapsies and best mates and walking home in single file along the canal. None of them survived the 80s intact. Most didn't survive at all. But we're not done. Not by a long shot. Because when the bell rang at 3:15 and we got home and the telly went on, well, that was a whole different kind of crisp. We're coming to those next. Saturday night, 1977. The fire's lit. The curtains are drawn against the dark. Your dad's in his armchair. Your mum's on the settee with her knitting. And the telly's warming up that proper telly, mind. The wooden box that took 30 seconds to come on and another minute to get the picture right. Generation Games about to start. Bruce Forsyth's about to come down those steps. And on the coffee table, in a little Pyrex bowl your mum kept just for snacks, were the crisps. Not playground crisps, family crisps, the Saturday night ones. Top of that table, almost every week, was a packet of Nik Naks, the original Nik Naks, mind, not the rubbish they sell now. KP launched them in 1979, and within 2 years they were everywhere. Ribbon saucy, nice and spicy, and the legendary scampi and lemon. They were knobbly, weird-shaped. They scratched the roof of your mouth if you weren't careful. And the flavour, well, the flavour was so strong it stained your fingers orange for the rest of the night. The recipe was changed in the early 90s, and again after that. They're still on sale, but ask anyone who remembers, and they'll tell you straight, they're not the same. Then there were Discos, made by KP as well, launched in 1979, and famously hard, properly hard. Not crisps so much as little crispy poker chips. Salt and vinegar was the flavour that mattered. Pickled onion came later. They came in a long red and white packet that looked, to a 7-year-old, like something you'd find on a real disco dance floor. They're still going, technically, but ask your grandkids if they've ever heard of them. They haven't. Bovril Crisps. Now, if you've never had a Bovril Crisp, I genuinely feel sorry for you. Smith's made them in the 70s. Properly meaty, properly savoury, tasted like a beef sandwich on a winter's day. The kind of crisp your dad would nick from the bowl when he thought no one was looking. They were quietly dropped in the early 80s. Smith's reckoned the meat flavour was going out of fashion. Mums were buying cheese and onion for the kids instead. The Bovril Crisp died not because we stopped loving it, but because the marketing men decided we should. And then, my personal favourite, and one I'd give a tenner for a fresh bag of right now, cheese footballs. Made by Planters and later by KP, these little hollow balls of cheesy puffed something appeared, magically, only at Christmas. In a proper tin, with a red lid. Your nan would put the tin on the sideboard in mid-December, next to the Quality Street, and you were allowed exactly 4 after your tea. 4. Counted out. The cheese football is technically still made today, in tiny batches, sold only at Christmas in selected shops, but the proper, year-round, family-sized tin that's been gone for 30 years, these were the crisps of Saturday night, of Morecambe and Wise specials, of that warm, glowing feeling of being 8 years old and being allowed to stay up till match of the day, of your dad falling asleep in the chair with a half-empty Pyrex bowl on his lap. We didn't know we were living in a golden age. We just thought it was Saturday. But the next group of crisps, well, the next group was where the grown-ups did their business. Now, if the corner shop belonged to the kids and the front room belonged to the family, well, the pub belonged to the grown-ups. And every pub in Britain, in 1978, had its own little world of crisps, clipped to a cardboard display behind the bar. You remember the display, don't you? That bit of yellow card, hung up next to the optics, with rows of crisp bags pinned on by their corners. The landlord would tear one off for you when you ordered your half of bitter. They were warm half the time from sitting next to the radiator. Didn't matter. They were perfect. Top of that cardboard display, in just about every pub from Cornwall to Carlisle, were Scampi Frees. Smith's Foods launched them in 1982, and I know that's just outside our window technically, but they belonged to the late 70s pub culture so completely I'd be a fool not to mention them. Little hard, crunchy, fish-shaped snacks that tasted of, well, scampi and tartar sauce and absolutely nothing else on earth. You either loved them or you couldn't be in the same room as them. Walkers eventually bought the brand. They're still around in some pubs, but spot one in a corner shop today and you'll think you've seen a ghost. KP Crisps. Now these were something special. Launched in 1979, they were a sort of crispy, puffy salt and vinegar disc that tasted somehow of every pub in Britain at the same time. Strong vinegar, proper salt, the kind of flavour that stayed on your tongue through 3 pints and a packet of Embassy No. 1. KP quietly retired them in the late 90s. There's still a campaign on the internet, even now, of grown men begging KP to bring them back. They never have. And the posh end of the crisp shelf, you ask? Well, that was Hedgehog Crisps. I'm not making this up. In 1981, a pub landlord in Wales called Phil Lewis launched a brand of pork-flavoured crisps and called them Hedgehog Flavour Crisps. The whole gag was that they tasted like roast hedgehog, which Romany travellers were rumoured to eat. The RSPCA threatened to sue. The story went national, and for about 2 years, Hedgehog Crisps were the most talked-about packet in Britain. They sold them in proper pubs, with proper landlords who liked a bit of mischief on the shelf. By the mid-80s, the joke had worn thin and they were gone. Cult status remains to this day. And one more, before we go. KP Cheese Moments. These were a sort of crispy, cheesy, hollow tube, much fancier than your standard cheese and onion. They came in a fancier bag, cost a few pence more, and your auntie used to buy them when she was having people round for drinks. If you grew up in a house where the good china came out for visitors, you knew Cheese Moments. KP killed them off in the early 2000s. Nobody really noticed. But every now and again, on a Facebook group for people who grew up in the 70s, someone posts a picture of the old bag and the comments fill up in an hour. These were the crisps of the grown-up world, see? Of pub gardens in summer, of standing up at the bar with your dad on a Sunday lunchtime sipping a Britvic orange while he had his bitter, of cocktail parties in the lounge where the adults laughed too loudly and you got to sneak the posh crisps off the side table. All gone, or as good as. So why? Why did they all disappear? That's the question we need to answer before we finish. So, 15 crisps, 15 flavours that defined a British childhood, a British Saturday night, a British pub counter, and every single one of them more or less gone. Why? Well, the honest answer is, it wasn't one thing. It was a slow tide. The first wave came in the 80s. The big American snack giants, Frito-Lay, mostly started buying up British crisp brands the way a kid buys up Panini stickers. Walker's, founded in Leicester in 1948, was bought by PepsiCo in 1989. Smith's, the proudest old name in British crisps, was swallowed up. Tudor went the same way, and one by one, the new owners did the same thing. They picked the bestseller, they killed the rest. Why make 20 flavours when 3 sell 90% of the volume? It made perfect business sense, you know. It just meant Bovril Crisps and Cheese Moments and Outer Spaces all went in the bin. The second wave came in the 90s. The health lobby got involved. Crisps were the enemy, salt was the enemy, fat was the enemy. The richer, stronger, weirder flavours, the meat ones, the heavily salted ones, the deep-fried novelty shapes, they were quietly dropped in favour of lighter options. Walker's Lights, baked crisps, air-puffed nonsense. The proper greasy, fingertip-staining crisps of our childhood didn't fit the new mood. And the third wave was just time. Tastes changed. Kids stopped going to corner shops because the corner shops closed. Pubs stopped selling crisps off cardboard displays because the displays got replaced by Walker's boxes from a wholesaler. Mums stopped buying Pyrex bowls of mixed crisps because they had Pringles tubes instead. And before anyone really noticed, a whole British food culture, small, weird, proud, regional, had just quietly vanished. We didn't lose 15 brands of crisps. Not really. We lost the world they came from. The corner shop where Mr. Patel knew your mum's name. The pub where the landlord pulled a half for your dad without being asked. The school playground where a packet of salt and shake could buy you a best friend. The Saturday night in front of the telly when a Pyrex bowl of Nik Naks was, quite genuinely, the height of family luxury. Those things are harder to bring back than a crisp recipe. But the memory of them, you see, well, the memory of them is something none of those big companies can buy. So before you go, I want to ask you something. And I really do want to know. What was your crisp? The one you remember best from when you were small? Was it a salt and shake on the walk home from school? A bag of Tudor prawn cocktail from a shop in Sunderland? A cheese football from the Christmas tin? Did you ever try a hedgehog crisp in a Welsh pub and live to tell the tale? Tell us in the comments. Tell us the flavour. Tell us the shop. Tell us who you were with. Let's keep these memories alive while we still can. And if this little walk down memory lane meant something to you, well, you know what to do. Subscribe to Britain Retold. There are more stories like this one waiting to be remembered. Until next time, take care of yourselves.